Well, I'm going on a business trip. Then I saw off my husband for his business trip, leaving one day early. I was left behind in a living room scattered with clothes such as a suit and socks, which my husband had messily taken off late the night before when he returned home. I wish he would tidy up a bit, but he always leaves it as is. When will he ever properly tidy up? As I was reluctantly about to tidy up my husband's suit again, I picked it up, and at that moment, two folded pieces of paper fluttered from the pocket to the floor. I wondered what these papers were. I couldn't ask him since he had just left for his business trip that morning. I thought they were some sort of note. Curious, I picked up the papers and looked inside. And something totally unexpected caught my eyes. A filled-out divorce form and a travel itinerary with his affair partner. I couldn't believe such things fell out of his pocket. The shocking content momentarily stopped my thoughts, but my mind soon calmed down. As I looked at the itinerary, a good idea came to mind. A trip, huh? Sounds nice. Maybe I'll join in. He even left the itinerary at my fingertips. I couldn't pass up using it. Smirking to myself, I immediately began preparing. The betrayer would bear a fitting consequence. My husband had no idea what was about to happen. I am Jessica, an office worker in my 30s, living with my husband, Scott. Before we were married, my husband used to take me on dates and was a wonderful man who cared about even the smallest things for me. I had a good impression of him and decided to marry him. But once we started living together, the man I knew was nowhere to be found. Housework is a woman's job. You do it, Jessica. It's not a man's job. Besides, I'm tired, so leave me alone. My husband never did any housework, and on weekends, he would either laze around or go out on his own. The considerate behavior he used to show me was nowhere to be seen. Dissatisfied with the reality that just increased the amount of housework for two people, I tried to talk about at least sharing some simple chores, or spending time together on either Saturday or Sunday, but he would get angry, saying, "Are you trying to steal my free time?" No matter how many times I told him, his attitude did not change, and eventually, I gave up on having couple time with him. Misunderstanding that I no longer had any complaints because I stopped talking. My husband began to come home late more often due to overtime and drinking parties. The frequency of his business trips was also increasing. Before, he used to complain that work was bothersome and he wanted to come home quickly. But now he worked overtime without complaining, which felt strange. Once, late at night, my husband returned home smelling of women's perfume on his suit. I thought it was strange and asked him what it was, but he just made an unpleasant face, saying, "It's just the smell from the nightclub where I entertained guests. Stop nagging me." And he quickly went to take a bath. I had noticed the same perfume smell a few times, but I could imagine getting angrily snapped at if I asked again, so from then on, I kept my mouth shut even though I had doubts. Overtime and entertainment are part of work. So I convinced myself it couldn't be helped and intentionally distanced myself from numerous suspicions. I wondered if there was any meaning in continuing to be married to him in such a situation. Maybe I'd be better off not thinking about unnecessary things if I were away from him. However, he was my husband. I wanted to cherish that relationship. Yet, I couldn't stop thinking about divorce. Then it happened on a Saturday. Well, I'm going on a business trip. I need to arrive one night early. Then I saw off my husband that morning. In the living room, the suit and socks that he had carelessly taken off when he returned home late on Friday night were messily placed. My husband always had a habit of leaving his clothes around. No matter how many times I told him or how much I tried to make it easier for him to tidy up, he never corrected his habit. Hating the living room getting messy, I always ended up tidying up myself. When would he ever tidy up? As I sighed over his childlike behavior and picked up the suit, something fluttered down from the pocket. Roughly folded 2 pieces of paper. What could these be? Perhaps some kind of note. But since he had just left for his business trip this morning, I couldn't ask him. Curious, I picked up the 2 pieces of paper and gently opened them. What is this? Looking inside, I was stunned. One was a travel itinerary starting from today. The other was a filled-out divorce form. I never thought such things would fall out of my husband's pocket. And my mind went blank for a moment. On the itinerary, in round female handwriting and my husband's handwriting, detailed plans were written. In the margins, there were flirty exchanges with some hearts like, "Scotty, I love you," and "Me too." Were they middle schoolers flirting? I couldn't bear to look at their exchanges. In shock from the betrayal, I inadvertently crumpled the travel itinerary in my hand. The scent wafting from the paper was the same as the perfume that had been on my husband's suit. He was indeed having an affair. The recent increase in his overtime and drinking outings, the frequent business trips, and the times he came home smelling of perfume all made sense as the results of his actions with his lover. While I was shocked by the sudden revelation, my mind was oddly calm. What was all my worry about our relationship for? I was foolish to care so much about my husband just because we were married. He was considering divorce while having an affair, even though I was the married partner. They are not middle schoolers, and my husband, a married man, surely knows what the paper means. I thought, if that's what my husband wants, I'll respond fully to his feelings. After immediately signing the divorce papers, I carefully spread out the crumpled itinerary again. I scrutinized it from corner to corner, checking their plans. It seems they are staying at an inn tomorrow. Oh, a trip for 2, huh? Maybe I should join in. Smirking to myself at the detailed itinerary, I crafted a plan in my head that would be fitting for my husband's affair trip. However, this alone wasn't enough. I pulled out my smartphone and called certain people. "Hello. I have a favor to ask." While seeking their cooperation, I also swiftly submitted the signed divorce papers to the law office. I had no intention of forgiving his behavior and betrayal. I was determined to get my revenge in the best way possible and prepared for the following day. And on the following day, together with the 2 certain people I had called, I headed to the inn where my husband was to stay that day. It was a tastefully quiet, calm inn. Since getting married, I had never gone out with him, let alone stayed together at an inn. According to the travel itinerary, there was still some time before my husband's arrival. Since the inn also offered a day spa, I decided to soak in the jacuzzi and relax my body until he arrived. How nice to enjoy this before my husband. I wondered if my husband would even have the chance to enjoy himself now. The soothing waters seemed to melt away my grievances against him. Warmed up, I waited for my husband's arrival with certain people in the lobby. It should be about time. The next moment I looked at my watch. My husband entered the inn through the entrance. Next to him was a woman who seemed to be his lover, arm in arm with him. However, before I could act, the 2 people beside me, seeing my husband, rushed towards them with fierce expressions. "Scott, what on earth are you doing? I'm so disappointed in you, doing such stupid things." My husband flinched as the 2 suddenly appeared and expressed their anger. "Dad? Mom too, why are you here?" His surprised voice echoed in the lobby. Actually, the people I had called right after discovering the affair were my in-laws. When I obtained the travel itinerary with the affair partner, I asked them if they would join me in a plan to discipline my husband. Apologizing to me, saying they were truly sorry, and being deeply angry about my husband's affair, they readily agreed to come to the inn. My husband was visibly shaken as I approached him with a smile. Oh, isn't that Scott? What a coincidence. This is where you're staying for your business trip, huh? It's a really nice inn. J. Jessica. Catching sight of me, my husband was speechless. It was impossible for me to be there. That was the look on his face. Ignoring his stunned expression, I pointed at the woman still arm in arm with him. Hey, who is this woman next to you? My husband was taken aback by my question. His eyes darted around, and with a strained smile, he answered nervously. Oh, just a colleague. Since it's a business trip, naturally we're together. Really? Arm in arm with just a colleague? You must be very close. Almost like lovers. With a sweet smile, I pointed out the forced excuse. In a panic, my husband tried to shake off the lover's hand. But she clung tightly to his arm, unable to let go. Next to my clueless husband, the lover twitched in response. Despite her cute appearance, she glared at me with a growling voice. Could it be, are you Scott's wife? Yes, I'm Scott's wife. The lover recognized me as the wife and suddenly shrieked nastily, calling herself Katie. You're the bitch who won't agree to divorce? Just break up already. Scotty doesn't like you anymore. He only loves Katie. How shameless can you be, causing so much trouble? What did she mean by not agreeing to divorce? Probably my husband had told her something, but it no longer mattered to me. We're dating. So, the pest should just divorce quickly and disappear from Scotty's life. Scotty is going to marry Katie. She laughed triumphantly, blatantly admitting to being the lover. My husband tried to deny it, saying that's not true, but it was too late. I had all but obtained the evidence. Apparently, my husband intended to marry the girl next to him. I decided to tell her the truth. Don't worry, Katie. I have already submitted the divorce paper yesterday. So, surely within a year, Scott and I will no longer be husband and wife. With a refreshed expression, I informed her, and she jumped for joy. Really? Then I can always be with you, Scotty. She rubbed her cheek against my husband's arm and looked at him happily. However, my husband's demeanor was different. Divorce. Are we really going to divorce? Despite the lover's intense gaze, my husband muttered in disbelief. I nodded emphatically, affirming the truth. Yes, it's true. It's fine, right? Since you're going to marry Katie. Wait, the divorce was a joke, right? It's a lie, right? My husband approached me unsteadily. Scotty? Why are you so flustered? What do you mean by a lie? What should have been happy news about being able to marry was disrupted by my husband's apparent shock at the divorce. The lover felt the oddity as my husband tried to approach me, pulling on his arm to hold him back. She questioned him sharply, but my husband, dazed, did not respond. You signed the divorce papers in front of me, right? You said you only wanted Katie, right? You said you wanted to divorce quickly and marry me. Why are you shocked about the divorce? The lover berated my husband, but he ignored her shouts, forcibly shook her off, and grabbed my arms, pleading. Jessica, can you explain what's going on? I can't keep up, let's talk. Is there really anything left to talk about now? Katie has just told me everything about your feelings. It's good for you, isn't it? You can get divorced from me and marry Katie. Please, I'm begging you. Let's talk, just this once. My husband, clinging desperately to me, pressed in. His pathetic state seemed to cool my warmed body. Watching him, my in-laws sighed deeply and pulled him away from me by the back of his neck. Enough is enough, it's pitiful. Continue this at home, understood? With anger in his voice, my husband finally closed his mouth. We couldn't bother the inn any longer. So we decided to pay the cancellation fee and discuss further at my in-laws' house. While the lover, not wanting to leave the inn because she had come all the way, whined about wanting to stay, my husband calmed her down and sent her home, leaving just my husband, me, and my in-laws for the discussion. My husband shrank under the cold stares of the three of us. For my husband, it was like being in hell. I was the first to break the silence, explaining how I found the itinerary and divorce papers falling from his suit pocket as I tried to tidy it up, and how I signed and submitted the divorce papers to the law office. My husband was sweating profusely, his face tormented. When did you start cheating? That is? He hesitated, and seeing him fall silent even now made me lose my patience. I reached out my hand towards him. Show me your phone. Now, I demanded without letting him object. Reluctantly, he unlocked his smartphone and handed it over. And I immediately checked his messaging app. The app was full of flirty exchanges, just like those written in the itinerary. Just looking at them was infuriating. But I managed to keep my cool as I scrolled back through the history, and discovered their relationship had been going on even before we got married. Truly the worst kind of husband. He must have been enjoying his time with his lover all along. However, it was my mother-in-law who was more furious than I after seeing the smartphone. What on earth are you doing, even though you have Jessica? Explain yourself properly to her. Furious, my mother-in-law slammed the table, causing my husband to cringe. He started to speak in a trembling voice as he awkwardly looked at me. It was just supposed to be a division of roles. Jessica is good at housework but nagging. Katie isn't good at housework but she's cute. So, I thought of Jessica as the housework person and Katie as the healing person. When you're tired, you want comfort, right? That's all Katie was. His absurd reasoning was almost too much to bear. I was treated entirely like a housekeeper. Did he think it was okay to just compensate for each other's strengths? Katie called me a bitch who wouldn't agree to a divorce. What's that about? We've never even discussed divorce before. That's because an ex-girlfriend who wouldn't break up with me just submitted our marriage registration and moved into my house, and wouldn't let me divorce. His grand fabrications were too much. It seems he truly believed he could fool anyone. The reason I was so despised was apparently because of this story. An utterly troublesome matter. Noticing my icy gaze, he hurriedly started making excuses. The divorce papers were just a dummy to reassure Katie, because she kept pressing for a quick divorce. They don't reflect my feelings at all. Did he think that just because it was a dummy, it wasn't a problem? The very act of writing an actual divorce paper for his lover as a reassurance was already problematic. That divorce paper wasn't serious. I would choose Jessica if I had to. Can we withdraw the divorce? Please, let it be. My husband knelt on the floor and continued pleading, looking down. I squatted down in front of him as he lifted his head. Look up, Scott. Jessica. He hesitantly raised his face and I smiled kindly at him. Seeing my smile, he seemed truly relieved and reached out his arms to embrace me. Who did you say was the housework person? Do you think anyone wants to be by the side of a husband who thinks of his wife that way? I coldly spat the words at my husband's face. It seemed he hadn't expected such a response. He froze, hands still outstretched, his body tense. Now that he had labeled me as just someone to handle chores, there was no reason for me to go back to being his wife. I will never retract the divorce. Why don't you have Katie, your healing person, heal the wound of divorce? Goodbye. I could never forgive him. Disgusted by my husband's naive hopes, I left his parents' house without looking back at him as he crumbled. The following day, my husband called me. It turned out that rumors of his affair had spread throughout his company. In fact, when his affair came to light, I had checked with his company about his supposed business trips just to be sure. I thought no one would be at the office because it was a weekend. But as it happened, an employee who was working that day answered the phone. Since there was no business trip, I hinted at his affair by saying to the curious employee, "He often disappears saying he's on a business trip." Perhaps because of that, by the time my husband went to work, rumors of his affair had already spread widely. Moreover, it turned out his lover worked at the same company. And their coinciding days off and the suspicious atmosphere when they were alone together fueled the rumors that she was his mistress. People were whispering he lied to his wife about going on business trips. And from that day, both my husband and his lover were subjected to disdainful looks. The company is buzzing with rumors about me and Katie. You called the company, didn't you? Do something about it. It's unbearable. It didn't have to go this far. On the phone, my husband complained bitterly. I hadn't explicitly told his company that he was having an affair. It was their own suspicious behavior that had led others to suspect them. You reap what you sow, it's all your own doing. Good luck. I sharply rebuked him and hung up the phone, cutting him off. Later, I demanded property division from both my ex-husband and his lover. My ex-husband paid from his savings, and since his lover, who was reckless with money, didn't have enough saved, her parents ended up covering it, so I successfully received the money. The story of my ex-husband's affair reached the upper management of his company, and an investigation ensued. During the investigation, they checked the dashcam footage in the company car he was using, which apparently showed the two of them in an intimate act. He should have known it was there, but it seemed my husband was also not the brightest. After that, both were fired from the company. Being fired prompted the lover to strongly press my ex-husband for marriage. Whether it was because she became annoying, my ex-husband ended up dumping her. However, this led her to become a stalker. She frequently contacted him. And even after he blocked her on messaging apps and made it impossible to contact him, she started visiting his house. He changed apartments once out of desperation, but she found him quickly. No matter if he stayed inside, she incessantly rang his doorbell day and night, continuing until he opened the door. Eventually, the lover filed a marriage registration without his consent and moved into his house. It was exactly the false story he had created, which made me laugh. He called me. "I can't stand Katie anymore, please help. Isn't it great that your healing person has become your new bride? Good luck." And I hung up. Why did he think I would help him? I immediately blocked his number, stopping any further contact from him. Finally feeling relieved that my relationship with my ex-husband was over, I thought maybe I could take a break from romantic relationships for a while. Deciding to focus more on work than romance for the time being, I am now working diligently.